Good morning, this is Tanner. What's up, you little vibe turkeys? I'm driving down to meet up with my brother Dane and Todd Glaser to talk out surf photography. If you don't know Todd, he's a good friend of ours. We've done a couple trips with him. Grew up idolizing his photography. It's insanely inspiring. He started with Surfer Mag, shooting film, specifically in the water. I'm sure you've seen some of his images, whether it's like Greg Long's covers or he's worked really tight with Kelly Slater. He just put out a book called Proximity with Taylor Steele that kind of celebrates that movie project. Todd's a warlock, 1000%. He's always got so much insight into why he does what he does. And so we're hoping today to kind of pick his brain, beep, boop, on where surf photography is, where it was, and potentially where it's going as we all live in the social world and staying connected. So I'm psyched. I'm super inspired for today. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the conversation pieces. It's been really fun to connect with the core icons that we kind of grew up inspired by, whether it was Neko Padrats, TK was a huge one. And Dylan, of course, has been a good friend. And that Weird Waves episode was really cool. And I love what he's creating. So today we're just going to dive right in on photography, which is something that we all love. And Todd is a master of the craft. So we will, I'm sure, get a lot of knowledge, which I hope. And too, Dane's the king of commentary. So bring him along. It'll be fun to have him on the conversations piece. We don't have any more in the can. If you guys do like the series, give us feedback because that's cool. I mean, I like a comment or two that says, hey, comb your hair. Or, hey, interview this guy. Or whatever. Have some fun and let us know how you're liking it.
This is a perfect example of kind of what I had in mind driving down here today. Like, this is Todd's book, Proximity, from the movie that he made. And, you know, like, what is 2020 right now? You know, describe to us, I mean, the whole kind of like state of surf photography. I mean, this is a book and this is such a beautiful piece. It's on a coffee table and we're marveling at this trip. It seems timeless in these pages, you know, like, I don't know, it just feels to me like that's a representation of where things are going. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, as far as like surf photography goes now, I think I'm almost like slightly out of touch with it a little bit.
No, Todd boy, what are you talking about?
I mean, this is like, to me, this was like, we made this a couple of years ago and I'm working on a new book right now. And so to me, I like grew up with print media and I really admire reading books. And so it's really special to be able to like hold something and to feel something and to share it with others, and versus like sitting around having coffee and be like, did you guys see my Instagram post 2 weeks ago? And they're like, what? No, I've seen like 30,000 since.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day, like Tanner made the zine and I opened up my mailbox and there was this, like a handwritten note and a zine. And I'm like, how cool is this? Like, you touched this and you made this and thought of us to share it with us. And so for us, that's like as special as it gets.
Yeah.
I think starting out as a photographer, I spent so much time in the library looking at photo books, and it was like always my dream to want to make a photo book. I'd previously worked on 2 separate films that we were going to make books on, and I was just too disorganized and couldn't even make it happen. And so this was the first project where I went at it with the pure intention of, we're going to make a book. We're going to make something special that we can hold, that we can show our family, share with our friends. And for me, it was kind of like a way to say, like, I'm shooting with the intentions of a book, not an editorial story, for not a commercial project. This is purely like for the love, my passion. And I think all the surfers in the project really responded well to that because it was all self-funded and it was self-produced. And I just called in favors from a couple different friends to really help out with the project. But yeah, this was like my baby. This was like my life's work.
Amazing.
On the shooting side of it, how is it different doing a book versus kind of editorial?
I found with shooting a book, you kind of tend to slow down because you feel like when you're shooting for a book, it's something that ideally someone's going to look at for a long time, and you're trying to tell all these different pieces of the story into each individual chapter. We didn't really know what we were doing, and at the same time, I found it in a way slightly, I guess, similar to shooting an editorial story because books, there's kind of like, in my mind, there's kind of two approaches to books. There's three. There's like a themed book, there's like a time book, and then there's like an all-encompassing book. And I think the most common way to make a book either fail or make it really difficult is to have a project that has no theme or no story. And so for this project, there was a beginning, middle, and end, 8 surfers, 4 trips, based on the seasons. And when we started it, we're like, okay, this is an art project. So like each surfer was on boards like custom painted from 8 different artists. Taylor Steele was directing the film.
Kelly had that sick Orca boards from...
No, that was a different project. That was from Kevin and Sal. Kelly, we partnered Kelly with an artist out of New York named Richard Phillips.
Okay.
He does these beautiful, like, oversized portraits. And then the more we learned about Richard, the more of a connection he had to the location that we shot Kelly with, which was really cool.
Talk about that section.
That was with Kelly and John.
Okay.
Were they playing chess?
Where they were playing chess. Yeah.
I loved that.
That was one of those situations where, like, you know, for each group, we're like, okay, but there's got to be a kind of a common thread between how do we, there's a reason why we have Kelly and John on the same trip. You know, they both kind of were raised by their mom. They both have 2 other brothers. They both love to surf more than anyone in the world. And they're also extremely competitive. Like, what kind of setting could we get them in to have an open conversation about their lives, about growing up, about surfing, about what it's like to be a world champion? At the time, John hadn't won a world title yet, and he hadn't won the Eddie. 2 months after we shot, John won the Eddie, and then that year he won the title.
Damn.
Pretty good run there.
He had a pretty good run. I mean, one might think that the time those guys spent together,
like something rubbed off.
Something might have rubbed off. But John's such a phenomenal talent. Like, it was just, but for us as a fan of surfing, Taylor and I were sitting back just going, wow, this is really special.
Was there even stuff, there must have been stuff that wasn't in the movie that they were talking, because they must have been talking for quite a while, and then it got cut down to be in the movie?
Yeah, well, we filmed 2 scenes. One was when they were going fishing, but we totally messed up. We only had 1 fishing pole.
Yeah.
And so it was really weird that we had
like who's going to get the fish?
Yeah, who
you
got
cast,
the
I
fish?
cast.
And they're really competitive anyway, so they're probably like, get the fish on the line and like, give me the ball!
I
Like,
almost should have probably fired it up more.
Right. And so
That's
we went
cool.
from like the fishing pole, and then we turned it into crab racing.
That's awesome.
And then what we tried to do is we tried to give each group kind of an opportunity to really get to know each other and be removed from their busyness of their day-to-day lives. But also, we did have a camera crew there that was kind of, Taylor and I, we wanted to give them the best opportunity to feel comfortable and relaxed, and then take a step back and just kind of let the cameras roll.
The Rasta Steph one, the conversations they were having were insane.
Yeah.
There was a bunch in that. I liked the variety of it. You could feel as a surfer, like, it's essentially what this is just talking about surfing. You know, it's kind of like everybody does it differently. Like Albie and Shano were classic, like having the beer, shooting darts and stuff.
Yeah.
For that side of surf, I really loved it.
And it's funny, and you guys know, like, Dane, you're like, both you guys, and Patrick too, you're like the happiest go lucky ever, but like when it's contest time, like,
oh yeah,
it's on.
Get your game face on.
Yeah.
You put a jersey on.
Yeah, you're putting, yeah, and even when you're kind of filming for a project like this, like,
yeah, you don't want to have the worst part. You know what I mean? Especially if the waves are on, you're in front of your heroes. You want to show them that you can hold your own and send it. You know what I mean? And prove that you got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you know what's interesting to me about like the book aspect to support like a film or a project like this? Like motion picture seems so like you have to capture it in a sequence of moments. You know, rolling out over a timeline, but like still imagery is so special because you're capturing like that whole, like for Kelly and John, that thing of competitiveness, their whole backstory, the moment that they're in, and you're capturing it in just like one single moment. And like how to do it, like you must have been shooting with your camera and just been like bang, capturing just tiny little moments that could, you know, celebrate that crazy depth of the storyline, just like one frame. You know, is there any shots in here that you were like, holy crap, that thing just blew my lizard
Holy
mind.
balls, this thing's good.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple, but you know, I guess before we even go on, you really have to like pay homage to the surfers in the project, because without them, like without you guys, like we'd be shooting photos of empty waves, or like we'd be shooting photos of who knows what. there's a lot of trust between like the surfer photographer relationship and filmer that you need to be able to like hold each other accountable and trust each other, but also know that like everyone's giving it their best shot. And like sometimes, you know, an idea may seem wacky, or it's like the third or fourth day in a row where you're up at 4 a.m. and everyone's tired and grumpy, and you're just like, you got to be the guy making coffee first thing, just kind of getting everyone psyched and getting everyone ready to go. And like, I don't know, good thing I'm kind of a morning person, so the morning.
Dude, you're super lit. Espresso is like your 9th cup of coffee.
You've really cultivated those relationships. I feel like it's synergetic with surfers. Like you would say, the images you've gotten with Rob, Greg, Kelly. Like I feel like you would be, from my perspective, one of the photographers who really goes deeper from just like, oh, I shoot the photo, or I'll see you down there, I'll shoot the photo when you're out. It's like friendship based, and it almost seems like the images you get, even if it is in the water, are more intimate in a way. I feel like it's a piece of art because it's a collaboration, you know, between the two people, but it seems like you take the time to make those relationships stronger. Is that kind of always been, for you, something that you strive for?
Yeah, I guess I've always kind of been a people person, although I was always pretty shy growing up. My passion is photography and the ocean. And so I think when you're surround yourself by people that share a similar passion, whether it be for the ocean or for surfing or for just kind of a zest for life and traveling, like there's so many moments when we're on the road and you're like, can you believe this is where we're at? And like, let's, like, we're living our best lives right now. Like, let's make the most of it. And yeah, I think there's kind of two approaches to being a surf photographer, or maybe even a filmer. And that's, one is let's just go somewhere and whatever happens, happens. And then the other side of it is to like, you kind of you do the research, you get a better understanding of where you're going, maybe who the subjects are, even to what kind of boards they're riding. And then you go, hey, the waves are going to be like this. Like, how cool would it be if we did exactly what you were going to do at 9:30 after you slept in, but you did it at 6 a.m. and when the light's golden? Like, how much better would that look? And then you always get a little pushback, like, really? Not from you guys, but from like everyone else.
Once you see the image and you see the light and you're like, what? Well, too, sometimes when you're shooting photos, and I love shooting when you're in the water, for example, and you're out there surfing. Like, we had a moment at Cloudbreak where which we love Cloudbreak, everyone loves Cloudbreak, but Taryn was like, seriously, like 1 foot, and we had just scored our brains out for like 5 days straight, perfect overhead, cloudy, and then all the crew was like, oh, it's gonna be crappy, and you know, having worked with Todd in the past, which you have too, it's just like, you're like, oh man, he's like, I got this vision for this morning light from underneath, and it's like just this one moment when the sun's coming up, and literally it was so crappy from the boat. Everyone's like, you guys are even going out? Like, even the guests weren't going out. And so we're like, we just go out for just a few, and there was like 1 10-minute window when the sun just came up orange right over the mountains and just locked into a tiny little barrel, like setting the trim line. And from the front, you're like, I don't even know what I did right there. I just went straight, but just set the trim. And Todd's underwater, and he comes up screaming like, oh, this is amazing. And you see the shot, you're like, that was that same wave? It was just so...
I've seen the shot.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's phenomenal. You would never know it's like waist high.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But it's the beauty, and so many people always trip out on like fisheye barrel shots or those moments. And for me, it's like, as a surfer, and it's more about like working with the photographer, bringing this moment to life to capture the feeling rather than a literal representation of what's going on. Like, for people to look at the image and be like, oh my God, it takes them into like this fantasy realm. And you're working together with the photographer to capture it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like a big closeout fisheye shot. So many people hate on those, but like, I love them. I love just pulling into closeouts anyways. I mean, the photos look insane too.
Like, we were talking about that earlier, like it's all about the process. And it's like, at the end of the day, if your whole goal is to catch the best wave on the best swell of the best day of the year at, you know, this particular wave, like, you have 364 days of a lot of letdown on all those other days. You know, like, that's actually a little bit of a sad life in my opinion. Because if you can't appreciate the finer things of like sitting in the sunrise in the South Pacific when it's 1 foot, like, I feel sorry.
That's true.
Because like, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, just like when we go surfing here, sometimes we'll wake up at 5 in the morning and paddle out in the dark just for fun. And I think the photo, like for me personally, the photos that I shoot are essentially an extension of what I see when I'm not shooting photos. So like those days when you and I go surfing super early in the morning in San Diego or up in Orange County, like the days we're not shooting, I'm still surfing those days. And those are the days that make me think about what photos we're going to take. And so it's like, when I'm surfing, I'm like, man, I wish the boys were here because we could get the craziest photo. And then I'll come in and be like, I saw this light. There's this one ray of light. It's got to be at this time on this type of swell.
Like scouting.
And
Scouting. Light scout.
It's kind of like a game. And it's like, you know, photography, there's like photo competitions where you enter photos and like they look at them on a screen and they're this big and like, you know, it's fun, it's cool, it's a great way to get your work seen. For me, it's more exciting to like that day that we shot up in Orange County, like at Salt Creek.
Yeah.
I'd never even shot photos there before. And I was like, I think all these numbers kind of make sense. Like, and we walked down in the dark and it was like bombing. And we ended up getting this really cool photo.
That was amazing.
That could be my favorite. I mean, maybe my favorite ever water shot that I've ever gotten. It doesn't look like Salt Creek at all.
Yeah.
It's massive. I was on a 6.6.
But I don't know. It's just like when I see a photo, like there's so much, it lets your mind play so much deeper than just the image, right? Like, and that's the thing with the book, or we talked about just capturing one moment, like of two people having a conversation. You immediately you're wondering what they're talking about or what they're thinking about. And it's the same with surfing. And to me, like as a surfer, that is just like what I live for. And that's why I miss opening up the mag, waiting for the mailbox to like, or the mailman to put the mag in the mailbox and just rip it open and just like play in that imaginary world of you know, dream, you know.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I was thinking of that shot that I saw on Instagram that you guys got in Cloudbreak. But what's your take on getting an image like that is timeless, but now the main platform that it lives on is social media, instead of it being, like, I feel like I can look back on a lot of your covers and still remember them, like clear.
Like the one that we got.
Yeah.
When you made the CT.
Yes.
That was sick.
Hell yeah.
That was dope.
That was a great
good
trip.
example. You open up the mailbox, you're like, two boys on the cover.
Camping right on the beach. That was so cool. But I mean, what is your thoughts on that nowadays? Like how things have transitioned into, like, how is it to be a photographer at this day and age?
It's, I mean, in the time that, from the time that we shot that photo to now, I think a lot has changed. For me, it's been probably I'm going into my 12th year of being a full-time surf photographer, or a full-time photographer. It's changed a lot. There used to be such a heavy emphasis on surf editorial. There was multiple magazines. There was a way to make, you know, a decent living, not a ton of money, but you had, for the first few years I worked at Surfer, essentially an unlimited travel budget, and we had 12 issues plus a photo annual and a big issue that there was a magazine that you had to create images for.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the word content really like existed the way it does now. And then there was this kind of transition point where the web was like secondary to the magazine. So you would do a photo shoot and you would just automatically hold the best images for the magazine, and then you'd put like the B or C photos on the web because you didn't really care. And then eventually, all of a sudden, the web started taking more precedent than the magazine itself, and then there's this really weird kind of gray area. And then social media came, like Instagram, and some guys really embraced it. And they were just like, I'm all about Instagram because we can share so many different images, stories at the click of a button. And so I kind of built up a level of resentment towards it because, you know, I came from a world where like you didn't really tell people where you were, and you would come back with a story and you would see it 6 months later, and then it was kind of like part of what I loved about surf photography is that it would inspire other people to want to go have those own experiences for themselves, and you didn't really draw this roadmap as to how to do it.
Yeah.
Or the timeline, you know, they couldn't match the timeline with the swell chart.
This
Right.
happened today.
And kind of make a clearer distinction of exactly how to get there. It left a little bit more to the imagination, I'd imagine.
Totally. And now social media is essentially an extended version of like a humble brag constantly.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
a good way to put that.
and we're all guilty of it.
Totally.
I'm guilty. I did an Instagram post yesterday of photos I shot in the morning. On the same, or I guess on the other side of it, social media is really cool because you can connect with so many people and you can do a lot of positives with it.
Yeah.
And whereas images that might not ever see the light of day, you get to share them and share a cool story behind them, and you get to learn more about your friends or see what they're up to. I still think there's that fine line between like making time to have a coffee and going surfing with your friends and leaving your phone away. Like last night, I actually had this dream. I was telling my wife about this morning that I just woke up one morning, left my phone on the table, and left a note. It was like, "I'll see you in a couple days," and just went on a surf trip and brought a surfboard, a camera, and a bike, and was just like, "I'll see you in a couple days." And whoever you run into during those days were these shared experiences that you get to have. And now it's like, it seems so crazy to not touch a phone for 3 days.
Which 15 years ago, that was just literally what you did. It was like, hey,
Yeah.
like my home line, like leave a message.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on a surf trip.
And we all kind of were like, made it out okay. But now if you go 3 hours without checking Instagram, you're like, you have this like nervous anxiousness of like, what am I missing out on? But then you forget about it because you're gaining so much content all the time that it doesn't resonate as long. But I think as far as like things like Instagram, it's a love-hate relationship. Like you love it because you get to feel like you're constantly connected to people, but without the real like authentic experiences with those people, you're missing out on a big part of like living, which is like human interaction. And I think that was one of the beauties of a surf magazine, is that you had essentially an editorial staff of like qualified professionals that would like give you constructive criticism, or they would support you if you made a great image, or they'd kind of, help.
Like a mentor.
They're like a mentor,
Yeah.
but they're also a way to. They would validate. They would validate great work and help you if it wasn't as good. Whereas now, like Instagram, you could be like, well, I got 5,000 likes on this photo. It must be a great photo, but the audience doesn't really know. They don't have the same like depth of knowledge as a great editor would. And so like a great editor and a great photo editor is really hard to find in the surf industry.
Who were guys that you worked with that you were like really like had a high level of respect in that category over the years?
I was fortunate to work with like Grant Ellis for 10 years.
The G-Man!
He's the legend.
He's the legend, and
Yeah.
he totally got it. And he was like, you could show him a photo, be like, Grant, I swam for 10 hours. And he's like, I don't know you swam for 10 hours. He's like, the horizon's a little crooked. You're like,
That's
Let me come back to you.
Valuable though. That's like constructive criticism, like that helps you grow.
it's so hard to get constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a trusted friend, companion, someone to really kind of give it to you straight, you can get into your head and be like, well, this is rad. And you're like, well, it's not rad. This thing kind of sucks. Like this guy, Grant, for example, or Jeff Devine at Surface Journal, has been doing this for a very long time, and they know what great photography is. And so guys like Larry Moore, they kind of help nurture a lot of phenomenal photographers, and they were ruthless.
I feel like I wonder if that pushes photography forward. That sense, like I remember, like, well, you get a cover shot, that's like the pinnacle, right? Or for however long that was. And that seemed like guys were starting to push the level. Like I remember seeing images that you were creating, that Eichner was creating, that Russo was creating, like the water photography.
There was a freakish moment of water photography.
It was mind-boggling. Pat Stacy's stuff, like, and I wonder now, because it is into your own platform. So it's like you could still go out there on 10-foot closed out, psychotic off the wall and get a shot like that, and then you put it onto your own platform. But does it still ring in the community of surfing the same way that like those cover shots did? Like everybody for that month was like, oh my gosh, like what is this photo?
When Eichner was putting those things out, Surfer Mag, yeah, I mean, I think everyone's jaw was dropping.
Like under the board on a, like, that's crazy.
And he was doing it on film too, so he had 36 chances to do that.
And how many shots in a sequence do you think he'd blow through?
probably 6 or 8 per sequence. So he'd maybe shoot
6 waves.
4 to 6 waves per sequence.
But I guess I'm asking because in nowadays, like, do you feel like the level of surf photography is still getting pushed to where that was getting pushed at that time? Or is it just getting ripped into different directions?
I don't know. I think in order to be great at something, whatever it is that you do, whether it be photography, whether it be surfing, whether it be business, there has to be something internally that drives you. And I think the validation of getting a cover is really cool, but I can certainly speak for myself, and I can't speak for guys like Daniel Russo and Scott Eichner, but when you're taking like 6 to 10 foot waves on the head, you're not thinking about a magazine cover. You're thinking about how to
relax.
Well, how to relax, but how to make the best images that you can, and how to do it safely. It's kind of like if you went and chased a massive swell to cloud break, and your whole intention was to go out and get a big wave with the thought of getting a cover, you'd probably do it once, and if you didn't get a cover, you'd never do it again. Same with, you see it a lot with big wave surfers. They go out, they'll catch one big wave at Mavericks, and then the photo doesn't get run, or they have a really bad wipeout and they never come back. I think there's something in the psychology of anyone that does something for a very long time that keeps them coming back for more and more. It's almost like they can't live without it. And I think that's what makes people, that's what separates people from doing something well to doing something good to doing something great. And I think the people that do something great, they can't not operate without it, regardless of the outcome.
I mean, that's the clearest example of Kelly Slater ever, huh? Like, he just seems like he embodies what he's doing.
Yeah, I haven't been around a whole lot of like world title campaigns, but I certainly know for a fact Kelly's the only person that I know who's, after winning a world title and winning a prestigious event like the Pipe Masters, goes surfing right after on the same day. Frothing, and then wakes up in the morning, goes surfing again. I think Kelly is so great at what he does because he loves surfing almost more than anybody. And there's a reason why he's able to do what he's done for so long, is because he's shaped his whole life around having the most amount of fun in the water and giving himself the best opportunity to ride the best waves. And so for him, he's like, okay, well, what if I try this board with these fins? Well, this wave would be really good for it. And then he's on a plane that night. Going to chase a swell with a board bag full of a bunch of different boards with a bunch of different fins, because that's what he finds joy out of. And I think he thrives in competition. But competition isn't just with a jersey on. He's just, if it's ping pong, if it's chess, if it's going fishing, if it's rock, paper, scissors, like, he's a competitive human being. And I think as a friend and as a photographer that spent a lot of time with him, it's challenged me to kind of step my game up to always be ready and be prepared, and also go, okay, I know whatever he's going to do is great in the water, so how can I elevate my game to come back with something great or exceptional?
Well, like, for sure, I mean, you're having this intimate opportunity to capture the greatest of all time in surfing, and I mean, there's been so many moments that you've gotten of Kelly and photos and stuff, and I mean, sometimes we've been in the water to witness like it going down. Like, what are some of your top 5 moments? I mean, I can picture a few in just my head that I've seen with my own eyes, and I'm like, holy, my goodness, like, this is mind blowing. And you had your camera there to capture it.
Yeah.
I mean, and not only Kelly, but is there like 5 significant moments that you can't even believe that you're in position to capture, kind of vibe?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, like, usually when you make, like, you know, an image that you think is special, or that kind of, like, you know, could stand the test of time, for lack of a better term, at the time, that's the last thing that you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. You're never in the water going like, yep, this next set wave's a cover, or like, yep, we're going to make history right now. You're usually kind of cold, you haven't slept very much, and in my head, you're like, make sure your exposure's right, make sure it's sharp, and like,
sure there's a memory card in there.
Yeah, make sure there's a memory card, make sure your battery's charged. You're like,
please make sure there's a card in there.
Yeah, you're kind of like, don't screw it up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking about the
Yeah.
whole time. I'm not thinking about
Because
like,
it's so rare to find those moments that are actually like worthy of a timeless image.
yeah, and there's been so many times like I've been sitting on a boat going, I should be in the water. I should be in the water. Oh, the current's kind of strong, but like if we're in the water, we're going to get something special. And then when you're in the water, you know, whoever you're shooting, we've both experienced this. You're like, how was that wave? You're like, that wave was so good. 10 feet inside.
Yeah, it got great 20
Just as
yards
I
inside.
passed you.
Yeah, just as I passed you, the thing flared out. And there's only so many of those moments where
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, this sucks. But you know, if you were sitting on the boat or, you know, on a jet ski or on land, you're going to capture everything, but you might not create anything.
And that's what I'm talking about, baby. That's just serious magic right there.
And so I think as long as you're comfortable enough, like being willing to miss moments,
Yeah.
and hopefully, I guess not to sound like egotistical, I haven't missed too many moments.
No.
But you kind of like, you want to give yourself the best opportunity to make something that's proud of, and then it's like when you guys are surfing, you go, oh no, Todd's in the water, we know he's going to miss everything. Like, I'd like to think there's a certain level of like, I know when you guys are paddling for a wave, you guys are going to do what you do and do it really well, so I'm doing my best to try to like
Yeah, for sure.
bring my A game to whatever the situation is, whether it's a head-high beach break or, you know, big waves.
Well, it's just like you guys were saying about that underwater shot, waist high. Dane could trust, like, hey, like, this is like a little dodgy micro barrel. Like, I might not look great right here when he's surfing that wave. And the people on the boat are probably like, that doesn't look great. But you knew, and he could trust that you had your vision in that moment. And I think that's really cool. It's like the way that you trust a surfer to know how to get inside the barrel or do the turn around you. It's like the surfer has to exactly trust you on that same level to
And
just
value
not
the
even think
process
about it.
too, like
Yeah.
valuing the opportunity to work with someone
Yeah.
that you respect and enjoy working with to create an image together. It's a mutually shared experience, which I feel like for me is my favorite part of surf photography.
I really like the peanut butter jelly day where we went down to Mexico, got completely skunked on a forecast that looked phenomenal in the morning. And we're like, what are we doing? And then wind was super funky. It's like, it shouldn't be blowing offshore. And we just made rally sandwiches and just had a blast, right? Like, that was so fun.
Well, I think we passed out in the car, just took a nap, and then all of a sudden we just woke up to like cans rolling down the street because the wind was howling so hard.
Yeah.
And we're just like,
well.
you know the sound when like flags are cracking at the whip. We're like, oh, it's on.
Yeah, because you just end up enjoying the time that you spend on those trips. It's like, you know, being in the water is a process, but also just enjoying everything. Like, literally getting skunked sometimes is so fun, and you remember those trips almost more sometimes than the ones that you get good photos, good waves, you know.
I forgot about that day, but that's what it's all about, really, is like going and having fun. Like, at the end of the day, like Dan, you touched upon it, just, you know, having that mutual respect, and Tanner, like, there's nothing better than like getting your boys together, waking up early in the morning, and like going on an adventure. And like, that's why we do it in the first place. And whether you get skunked and you sit around and have coffee and laugh about getting skunked, or like you go and score the best waves of your life, it's fun. The whole process is really fun. And like, yeah, that day was fun. That day was epic. And I think, like we were kind of talking about earlier, like, if your whole goal is solely to get good waves, you're kind of missing out on a lot of other aspects of life. And like, you can take that with surfing, and you can take that outside of surfing. Like, yeah, really just kind of like embracing the experience and just enjoying those around you. Like, I'm sure you guys have traveled a ton. I've traveled a bit. Like, there's nothing worse than being somewhere rad and being around people that you don't really like.
Yeah.
You go on a boat trip with someone you don't really jive with, like, those boats get pretty small pretty quick.
Totally.
But then you can be 4 dudes sleeping in a truck having the best time ever. And that's the beauty of what we do. And we've been super fortunate that we've been able to turn into a living. But yeah, I mean, if that all ends today, like, we still have those experiences. And the cool thing is that we can still recreate those experiences and like inspire others to go have those shared experiences.
That's why I felt like when you were talking about the way that you've approached it is to not, growing up was to go on these trips to give the inspiration factor out of it. Like, you know, you weren't giving the actual dates, times, swells, whatever, but you were giving that imagination of getting that with your friends.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept because that's basically what old surf movies were for us growing up, was like, what? These guys are scoring? Where? I don't even know where that is. That's insane. Like, I can't wait. I want to get barreled like that. Instead of actually going like, oh, that's a west-northwest swell on this day. Like, so that
Get
if
the
you...
Google map out.
Well, because what happens, I think, is if you know so much, right? So it's like, I know that this wave's good on this swell at this tide. You go on that exact time, and it's... Now you have an expectation of what you think it's going to be, and a lot of times it comes under that, and then you're disappointed, but it actually, if you didn't have that expectation, you would have had a blast anyways. So then you're fighting what's real in that situation.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and I really like how you said that. It's like, you want to inspire other people to go forward, to adventure, kind of.
I mean, and you don't have to go, to Africa or go to Australia or go halfway around the world to go adventure. You can have your own adventure in your own backyard.
Oh, yeah.
You could ride
Totally.
a different board, and I think like what you guys are doing with like the Stokoramas, I mean, essentially like when we're all in our 30s. When we go surfing, we're like grown men on toys
Yeah.
in like skin tight suits.
Groms for life.
Groms for life. Like, it's pretty silly if you actually were to, like,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
if you take one step away, we're like a bunch of like dudes with beards in like tights on toys in a parking lot talking about how much fun we had.
Yes.
But if you look to like what you guys are doing with the Stokorama, like the reason that we all got into surfing is because it was fun. And if you like lose that sensation of having fun, you're kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. And I understand like in a competition format, like it's good to have expectations, it's good to have goals, and it's good to like thrive under certain pressure and to like give yourself the best opportunity to perform at the highest level. But at the end of the day, like, I think surfing is something that you want to be able to do for a lifetime. And if you just like anything, you rise up super fast, you're going to crash super hard. And I think like those lessons, like if we can keep a clear mind on those lessons in life, we can live a much fuller life in and out of the water for a lot longer.
Do you feel like with surfing, because you've seen so many different sides of it, and you see the fun in all different sides, like you're shooting at the top level of competitive things with Kelly, and you're going as far off the grid as you can with Greg. Do you have a preference on what side of surfing like that you identify yourself with? Exactly,
Some
like
crazy
yeah.
San Diego groove town.
I mean, you're getting the full spectrum of surf.
Yeah, I feel like I don't love being around competitions. It's not really my favorite place to be. I appreciate them, and I've got the most respect for the guys and girls that do them. I personally don't love it because I like seeing my friends in a pretty happy space, and if they're not in a happy space, I want to be able to help. And if it's based on a competition format where someone didn't catch the wave or they dealt with some weird jockey situation and interference, that's not why I love surfing. That's not why I love going to the ocean. And when you're at a competition, even if your friend wins it, it's kind of like, at times it can feel like a team victory, but really it's them and their experience and their competitive drive that's pushing them through it. So I'm stoked for my friends when they win a contest, but I'd much rather be like, cool, dude, you won yesterday. Let's go down the beach and go have some fun. And removing the stress of like all the media, all the cameras, which is weird because I have a camera, but
You want to be the only camera.
I want to be the only camera.
Is that what you're saying?
Let's get rid of all these other cameras.
Yeah.
Can you guys move a little bit?
But then at the same time, it is really cool. Like, I do think the production that the WSL does as far as watching surfing, like I'd much rather watch a surfing contest on the computer than to be there. And I know it sounds really weird, but the production is so good.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of be selective on the heats that you watch, and then that gives like me more time to go surfing.
That's true.
But the times I've been to a competition, I've gone and I've been pretty hyper focused on documenting maybe one or two people. And in that sense, it's cool because you really get to like capture like the essence of the fans. But for me, I like to like visit that for like 1 or 2 days a year. I've had opportunities to do like the whole world tour, and it's not really super interesting to me because there's a lot of downtime, and I'd rather be where the waves are good and everyone's having a good time, having fun, and just kind of like experiencing.
And yeah, even the downtime, it's kind of trippy because they're getting prepped for the heats.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there as well. So it's like in theory, you're in these locations and it would be like a surf trip when you're not in a heat. But if you're stepping that far away from the contest zone, you might not be keeping the pencil sharp enough for the heat. So it's this tricky, like you can click off a little bit, but you can't really leave the whole mindset of being there for the contest.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. And then, it is slightly strange too when you go, okay, we're going to go to this place for 14 days and we're going to surf for 4 of those days, but we don't know which 4 of those days are, so you can't really like plan anything.
Yeah.
And you can't really do a whole lot. But I think as a competitive surfer, you sign up for that so you know what you're getting yourself into. And I think that's more of a mental preparation than is a physical preparation, because when you guys are surfing at that high of a level, whether it be on the QS or the CT, you're kind of like already in that mental state. For me, from a photography standpoint, I'd rather capture something that that other people aren't shooting, and then you go and like create something together. And for me, that's more fun. I've tried to kind of base my relationships off that experience, but also create like a body of work that that looks good. So when I'm like, boys, I think the waves are going to be good. Like, I kind of have this idea, but we got to go to Fiji for this or Tahiti. You guys are like, well, he's made good work in the past. He's fun to be around. Like, I kind of trust him. We should go make something together. And then sometimes the brands get behind that too and can support like, those different projects.
Yeah. But I was thinking like, because when you're saying like shooting something that nobody else is shooting, you must have been so giddy when you were getting those crazy shots of Kelly's wave pool. Literally in the middle of California.
You can't tell that it's an artificial wave. The one that's on the cover, like that one always stands out to me. And it was his first generation of the wave, so it was like just this motorboat.
Just
right
corn
there.
pipe.
Yeah, I mean, to be standing there and see that come to life, it's like Frankenstein wave, and you're like, holy crap. Were you in the water for that shot? I mean,
No.
why does it look so crazy?
For the land shot, or for the cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really funny story behind that one, because we were, I'd known about that project for quite a long time. Kelly and his team brought me in on that project in like 2012, when like the first shovel hit the dirt.
So 2012, when was the photo of the wave?
2015.
That was 2000, that was that long
So
ago?
you'd already sat on
Oh
that
my
idea for
gosh.
3 years? That's
And they'd sat on it for 5 years before that.
really?
Yeah.
Whoa. Kelly keeps a good secret.
The man can
Yeah.
hold the line on that.
And so, I mean, that was Kelly's vision for a very long time.
Was he
And
riding that wave, or was it an empty wave? He was on the
He
wave.
was on the wave.
On the wave, yeah.
He was on the wave, and we were actually in Fiji the day before. He had a week, he used to have a week in Fiji, and we were over in Fiji, and my wife was there, and his family was there, and it was just kind of like, I forget who else was there. I think Shane was there with his family, and we were at lunch, and he pulls me aside. He's like, hey, check it out. And it was the video of the very first empty wave that had just shot on their phone. And he's like, it's on, we got to go. So here I am.
Swells up, buoys are popping.
It looks like the wind just switched.
Yeah. Well, the machine, it was like Frankenstein, like it worked. And so we jumped on a plane that night and flew home. And we got into LA late at night, and we drove up to Lemoore.
It's about a 3-hour drive.
Yeah. But what was funny about it was that, at the time, like we weren't even naming Lemoore. Everything was like super top secret. And we go and we shoot that session. And that was the first wave after lunch. So it was December. So the water, I believe, was like 48 degrees. The air was pretty cold.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget showing up in like purple light. And there's this photo of Kelly with his arms up. And it's the first wave of the day. And it's coming down the reef for the first time. And I'll never forget shooting it. And then after that wave broke, I looked over the camera like you do when you're shooting surfing. And I was waiting to see what the next wave did. And that's when I realized,
We're a long way from home.
we're 100 miles from the coast.
Like, that's not the ocean, baby. Don't worry about it.
Like we're in a wave pool. And that totally blew my mind. So we shot that session. And then the next day was like, I think it was the Jaws contest, and it was Surfer Pull. And I kept getting calls from the guys at Surfer going like, hey, are you guys in Hawaii? And I'm like, no, I'm still in California. I like just flew home from Fiji, and I'm not going to make it till tomorrow. We're going to miss it. And no one knew that session existed.
They're like,
Because
what do you do?
yeah, when you pulled up, everyone had to put their cell phones in a basket, and so there was no phone. So I had the only still camera, and we had a video team.
Oh my gosh. And
I was
non-disclosure.
Casual.
yeah. Oh no,
Jeez.
we'd been on NDAs for a couple of years at that point.
Wow.
And it was really nerve-wracking. I remember John Moore was there, and after that wave, he's like, "You're capturing history," and I was like, "I'm so nervous. I just don't want to mess it up." And if you actually look at the camera roll of that day, there were still images from Fiji on the same card.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
we'd shot Cloudbreak that afternoon, jumped on a plane, and then I hadn't had time to download the photos. And so it was like afternoon Cloudbreak, and then it was Lemoore, all in the same, like,
That's so
essentially
genius.
roll of film. And I was super nervous, and I was looking around, and we had this film crew. We had 4 big red cameras, and I was the only still photographer. And I was just like, don't fuck it up. Like, don't mess this up.
It's riding on me.
Yeah.
To bury that photo for a little while, right?
Yeah, so I was staying at the Surfer House right when I got to Hawaii, and so I was staying with all the editors and photo editors, and so I'd missed Surfer Pole, which they were upset about, and I couldn't tell them why. And then, but I had to get this edit done, so I'd wake up at 2 in, and I would do my edit from like 2 in till 6 in, and then when the editors would wake up, I'd have to close the computer.
Oh my God.
And then there was like days when like Off the Wall was good and like Rocky Point was good, and they're like, you should go shoot so-and-so doing airs, and I'm like, I don't care. And so they were actually kind of getting upset with me because I was like sleeping in the middle of the day.
Because you had been up.
I'd been up all night editing.
Midnight.
So good.
Yeah, and then eventually,
Acting really strange.
God, what's up with this guy? Is he insomniac?
And then eventually I ended up moving into Kelly's place, and because I was just like, I need to be able to edit.
Yeah.
And him and Kalani were kind enough to let me stay with them, and I just like, I couldn't be around all the editors. And then when the video released, I was on the phone with John Moore, who was the creative director at the time, and one of the partners on the project, and I was like, dude, congrats, the film looks so good, and no one had seen the still photos yet. Because we couldn't email them, no one had seen anything. And I just get an email from Grant, and he was like, were you there, ... cover. And I was like, hey John, like, do you guys want the cover of Surfer Magazine? They go to print tomorrow. And he's like, hold on, and all the partners were in the meeting, were in the office. And he's like, I'll call you right back. And so he like calls me back in 5 minutes. He's like, if you can do it. And so I had to like drive up to Surfer with my hard drive.
Wow.
And sit with Grant in like full closed doors and go through the images, because at the time you couldn't show the pier.
Oh.
You couldn't show how the wave was made because it was all top secret.
Okay.
So if you look at all the photos, so we had to shoot specific angles that you couldn't show the fence because no one knew how the wave was made.
Wow.
And then,
Dude, that's just like kind of a thrilling time for Surf Mags. I mean, picture being Grant, knowing that you're coming in with these odd images of something that you have just seen for the first time, never really believed could be that magnificent, and you're now going to be able to be one of the first people to witness it. I just feel like, to me, that's a mind-blowing moment, and it's thrilling to the people involved in it, you know?
How sick is ... cover?
You get that, you're like, what? Me?
but it was really, it was really cool, but it's exciting, and that, to me, that's a rush, and to me, that's what really gets me going about surf photography, or photography in general, is creating something that no one else knows is being created.
Yeah.
And then seeing people stoke when you finally have it. And it's kind of like, with climbing, there's like first ascents, and with surfing, it's like catching the first wave. And for us, like, there's always been that fine line between like capturing something that no one else knows, or going to a place that maybe some people know about, but not exploiting it, or not
doing it tastefully.
Yeah, doing it tastefully. And
Yeah.
you guys know, in some of the places you guys have been to, it's like we go to some sensitive areas, but you kind of want to allude to the idea of maybe where you are, or maybe just give enough information that makes people want to like pack up a bag or pack up a truck and go camping or jump on a plane, but not necessarily just go, here's a roadmap and this is how you do it.
Totally. Which I feel like today now that's like becoming such a gray area. Like you're saying, the concept of social media is almost a humble brag, so it gets a little bit more like, oh, this is a bit of a roadmap here, you might step into it. So I don't know, it's just cool, like reflecting on those moments that are so purely for the imagination.
Like,
So what do
yeah.
you think, just to kind of like wrap this up, what kind of like are your highlight moments that you just look back on? I mean, obviously it's every day is available coming in the future here, and it's still a work in progress, but like, you know, just a couple moments for us to reflect on that were meaningful.
I mean, I guess the biggest highlight is just being able to like be able to build the friendships and be able to go to the places that we get to go to and have all these like shared experiences that are really positive, because there's a lot of like, you know, pretty negative experiences out there. So like we've had some really just good times with friends, and you build these friendships that last far beyond an editorial story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, like the biggest.
That's cool.
The biggest win. Photographically, I mean, there's, you know, the first cover I shot of Surfer was pretty special. The one of Greg.
That was your first cover?
Yeah.
On the pink board?
On the pink board.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, photo of the year?
Yeah, that was the photo of the year too. That was kind of cool.
Well, that's a good way to say
that would be super special.
And that was, you know, that was all Greg. He forecasted the swell and invited me.
And it's kind of like their spot, right?
Yeah.
They have their own little remote area that they've enjoyed surfing.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go down there and capture them in their playground, which is like
Longland.
Yeah.
It's like Disneyland, but it's Longland.
It is. And we've actually done quite a few trips back to similar regions, and I just go surfing now.
That's cool.
And so now, like where I'm at now, I've been kind of transitioning my work to where I'm doing more commercial work and still some editorial work. Not as much in surfing, because the business doesn't quite exist the way that it used to. So I'm kind of being a lot more selective on my time being away and the swells I'm choosing to chase. So I've been surfing a lot more. Kind of trying to look at home with a bit new perspective. I used to not shoot at home very much because I was traveling so much. When I was home, I just wanted to surf. And now I'm like, okay, you know, we live in a pretty special place, and there's a lot of adventure to be had just outside my front doorstep. But as far as photos go, I'm getting to work on like multiple films with Taylor Steele has always been super special.
Seaside and Beyond.
Seaside and Beyond.
very good.
We did Proximity. We did This Time Tomorrow. We did Castles in the Sky together. I got to work on a project on that one. The HBO documentary was really cool, The Momentum Generation.
All of those are amazing.
My work's kind of transitioned from, you know, editorial to making books, and I'm working on another book at the moment, to getting to do some art shows all over the world. And I feel like I'm still kind of like sitting on this body of work and this collection of surf imagery that I love to create, and that I've had some amazing times, but I'm also enjoying the challenge of shooting work that's outside of surfing too.
What's the one shot you're chasing at this point? Like, what
Is there still a shot? Or?
is there still a shot?
Yeah, I'm just like, everyone I talk to, I'm just like, let's do a surf trip. I'm like, is there clear water? Can we shoot underwater?
Heck yeah.
Like, that's all
There it is, baby.
Like, that's all I care about.
I'm
Like,
going down low.
I want underwater, and it's funny because
That's cool.
for a while I was all about like, I want to be at the biggest waves in the world, all over the world. You know, I want to be at Waimea. I want to be at, you know, I've actually never been to Jaws, but you know, Mavericks. I used to shoot Mavericks from the water. I'd like drive up, sleep in my car, swim out from the beach, shoot all day, swim
On
in.
your boogie board.
Yeah.
I remember that. That
Yeah.
was Derek Dunphy. That
Yeah.
one. That
Well,
was
I
one of
did
the most
that.
amazing shots.
I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And luckily I'm kind of short, so this Honda Civic kind of like, it was okay to sleep in.
Yeah.
Good gas mileage.
But, and you know, those days are rad, and you do them when you're young, and they're super fun, but I still have that like zest for life and zest for chasing swell. But then after a
Did
while,
you say zest for light?
light and life.
Light.
What did you say? Light or life?
I said life, but
Oh god.
I mean, gosh, as a photographer, I'm like, well, that must be ingrained. The guy's
That's
just
insane.
zesty for life.
Yeah.
Like, geez.
Peanut butter jelly sandwiches.
more peanut butter jelly sandwiches, coffee.
Okay, hold on. Before we go, what's that bag of coffee over there? Can we go grab this thing? This is.
Is this the
Todd's.
deal?
Grab that bag right there just to promote it to all of you viewers out there. If there's 5 or 10, that's great.
Oh, dude, you're on Signature Series Coffee? I didn't know that.
Yeah, my friends and I, we started this coffee company called Maria, and we each got to get our own roast, so it's like myself.
That's so
Jay,
dope.
You want to hold that up to the camera there?
And
Oh,
like,
that's rad.
People at home.
Look at on the back. Dude, look who's on the back of this thing. It's lit.
the
Kids in the dark room.
That's really cool.
Being a coffee lover and a coffee snob, we had to call it the darkroom roast, and Taylor Steele has the momentum generation, the momentum roast. And
You want to get lit up like Benji Weatherly? Let's freaking go.
And of course, we did the underwater photo because that's like what I love to do.
That's really rad.
But it's just been really fun to kind of expand on what we're doing at the moment and try something new. Dive into a couple different businesses, and I don't know, just try to maximize as much fun as we have without sitting on the computer too long.
That's cool.
Well, let's do it. Let's get in the water there, Todd boy. Thanks so much
Let's do it.
for hanging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
That was fun.
Yeah, thank you. I'm stoked, boys.
Thanks for the coffee as well.
Thanks for coming down.